Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today we are getting into a subject that we haven't gotten into in a while now. I haven't done a video like this in a while and regarding finances. Now in the past, we've done a couple of videos in regards to budgeting, savings, and things of that type of sort. And, I was really interested to be able to bring that to you guys, especially for a lot of guys out there who don't know. And I realized in the community, there's a lot of guys, just regular average Joes who are not really good with their finances and don't realize how important that is. And we had covered in the past a few videos in regards to specifically budgeting, especially on a lower level, just your average person trying to kind of really get a sense of their finances, how much they could budget on a low level. And then later on, we went into things like investing. We spoke a little bit on investing, but I want to dive a little bit more, I guess you could say, refreshing the topic. And so here I just brought up a Fidelity page, and I mentioned them before in the past when I did some videos in regards to budgeting and investing. But here we're going to take a look at this because Fidelity, out of the top three ones, or at least what I've been informed is the top three ones, is Fidelity, Vanguard, and Schwab. I feel like Fidelity is a little bit more the easiest and flexible to kind of manage. There's no, I don't want to say the word starting fee. There's no minimum fee to activate certain types of accounts, or at least buy certain types of indexes, or indexes in general. Whereas something like Vanguard, which is also equally as popular, requires sometimes a minimum, if I'm not mistaken, all the time, a minimum to buy an index. For those who are unfamiliar, an index simply is almost like a portfolio of various stocks that make up that index. So for example, Fortune 500 or any investment company's version of a S&P 500. So Fidelity's S&P 500 or Vanguard's S&P 500. The 500 would be the top 500 stocks. Each one will make their own version of it and have different weighted percentages. For the most part, they're the same thing. And every other brokerage account will have their own version of a S&P 500. And essentially, it's a portfolio of the top 500 stocks, top 500 companies. So that's what an index is like. And some indexes are different. Some indexes will specify just certain other conditions, maybe just tech stuff. Some ones will be just, oil companies or things of that sort, just to give you an idea. So that's essentially what an index is. So there might be moments where certain terms I might try to kind of elaborate on a little bit, but for the most part, we're not really diving into speaking on the points of what makes all this stuff up in a little course here in terms of the language of this stuff, but just really tips on what you guys should get started in as far as what you guys should invest. Now, though you have the categories here for you can do all, I clicked on let me see if zooming is better. No, that's a little too much. Let me just try to get us in a little bit closer. I hope that you guys can see everything pretty well. So I clicked on just most popular because when I clicked on all, it was a little overwhelming. And I don't want there to be too much on the screen because the truth is just the popular ones are really the ones that you kind of really need to focus on. So for anybody who is just kind of getting started, I'm going to try to look off of camera here because I'm behind the camera right now and it's kind of making it hard for me to see. So for any of you guys who are just kind of getting started into this space, I really would say take a look at any of my past videos where I said where it's titled budgeting or investments or things of that sort. I'll try to put a link in the description for some of those old videos. But generally speaking, what you're going to start with is a brokerage account. What that is, this one right here. So your standard brokerage account is simply, it's just your regular window into the stock market, whether it's individual stocks, whether it's index funds, which like I said before, is like a portfolio or a collection of stocks. So you have individual stocks, you have collections of stocks, which is known as indexes. ETFs essentially are about the same thing. So I don't want you to get confused with terms of that, what you're looking here. So essentially it's just either individual stocks or portfolio of stocks that are put together in one space that allows you to kind of just, kind of sit it and forget it. You set it and forget it. You buy it, and then it will kind of distribute into the ones that are doing pretty well for that situation. If it's like, say, the entire stock, it's going to put in order of the ones that are doing good versus the ones that are doing less, generally speaking. Like I said, I'm not going to get too deep into all that, but essentially this is your regular setup for your regular kind of your basic account. What that is, and mind you, before I go any further, you can have multiple of these set up, and what will happen is on your left-hand side, if you're logged in, there'll be a list of all your accounts. So if you have a, one for retirement, which will be known as an IRA, and there's different versions of that. But you would have a IRA, you'd have your regular traditional brokerage account. You might even have your kids one all on the side. So with your one login, you'll have all these additional accounts that you would have set up, and there's nothing to set them up. It's free to set them up. And then you just add money to each one as you go along, if you choose to, or when you're ready. So the brokerage account, the standard brokerage account, simply is you can put money into it, into investing inside some stocks. If you pull that money out while you made gains, you're going to get taxed. You can get taxed at any point in time. There is no benefit later on down the line for you being a certain age. Those are what the retirement accounts are for. But this is just your standard account. This is like, if you know you're going to be putting money in and possibly taking it out, that's really the one you want to have. And that's probably the one you want to start with. Now, I'm not going to say, depending on your situation, you may want to put more money into that. Maybe you want to put less money into that, depending on your situation. But generally speaking, you want to have that. The ones I'm going to go over, the accounts that I think you should have, like I said, it's free to start them. You add money as you want. So you can still have an open account and have no money in it. That's fine. That's going to be, like I said, one that I feel you should definitely have, but we're going to go over the ones that you should really kind of be putting into. Now, in that aspect, I think you should always put a little something in it, but depending on your end goal plan, you may not need to put that much into it. And I'm going to explain why. Generally speaking, if you are younger and you set up your retirement account, which is going to be a IRA, that stands for individual retirement account. And there's different versions of traditional and Roth, and I'm going to go over those in a moment really quick. But the retirement account, if you are, say, young, say if you're like 25, you start your career job, or whatever the case is, you start working, whatever you're doing. And your goal might be, I'm more about having money for when I retire, not so much in advance. So then in that case, you might have your standard brokerage account, but at the same time, you might say, I don't need to put a lot of money into it, because your retirement account, you're not going to be able to take money out till you're 60. But if you know you're hard on your goal and you're going to get to that goal, it doesn't really matter. You could just keep putting money into it and it's not a problem. And in that case, that would be, where you'd want to put more money into that. Or if you are, say, not too far from 60 and you have to have, we'll say, a second phase in your life where you're like, okay, I didn't kind of quite put away things like I needed to. And I covered this in a past video before, in terms of saving and budgeting, that some people might be in their 40s and now they got to learn to budget and kind of make a more immediate retirement plan because they weren't really doing that already. In that case, you're going to definitely put as much as you can inside the retirement account, which there's a limit. Generally speaking, it's about $6,000 a year that you could put. And then whatever extra you might have, you could put into your regular brokerage account, which would get taxed later on. But depending on the retirement account, we'll go over the way the taxes work with those. But generally speaking, you'd want to be putting into that, because if you're like 40 years old or anything above 40, but not 60, you're going to reach 60 anyway. So we might as well put into that one and let that money be tax free when you take it out, as opposed to putting in the traditional one. And when you get 60, there's no benefit to it because that one's just a basic account that's made to make interest, but it can still be taxed. The only other ones that I really want to go over is, and like I said, here you have the Roth IRA and then traditional Roth. And I'm going to go over the differences between those two. But another one, I'm going to see if it's here. If not, I'm going to have to go into the specific area to show it. Okay. They used to have the setup on here a little bit differently. I am going to go to Let's see if they have for children. Here we go. I'm just gonna have to click the whole new category and it should be on here. Custodial accounts. So you have custodial account and you have different ones here, but the ones that I want to really focus on is your regular custodial account. And there is the Roth IRA account, or essentially like the retirement account for your kids. Those two I really like, and those two I had set up. Now I'm going to explain. The custodial account essentially is your regular brokerage account, like we already just went over. The only difference is you're setting up for your kids. You could put money into it, but you can't take money out. So you might say, I want to invest in, we'll say Apple, Microsoft, Tesla, whatever it is you want to invest in. You can invest in those individual stocks. You want to invest in the S&P 500. I'm going to invest in that. There's a full index of many stocks, the top 500 stocks. You invest in that for your kids. You put in a couple of, $100 in there, boom. You can't pull that money out because once you go in it, it's their account. Now, even though they're too young to do anything with it, they're below the age of 18, they can't touch it. You can only put money into it. You can't take it out. And there might even be, I'm not 100%, but I believe that there's a limit to how much money you can put in at a given time for your kids. I know that there's a 6,000. Well, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to get into that in a moment. As far as the regular, I don't know if there's a limit in terms of what's considered like a gift or how those kind of things work. So you kind of read into that. But generally speaking, you should be able to just, like I said, load their accounts with money for that one, whatever the case is. But it's going to only be able to be accessed at the age of 18. So that one's good to have in general if you want something for your kids when they turn 18. And obviously, this starts to become a test of your age in regards to them, because what I'm about to go into in a moment is the Roth IRA for your kids. Now, when it comes to them turning 18, I'm sure that's not an issue for you making that. But in terms of your kids reaching 60, because this is going to work like a traditional retirement account. So basically the two accounts that I told you would set up for yourself, you're doing it for your kid. The regular custodial one is a traditional brokerage account for your kids. And the Roth one is a Roth IRA for your kids. All that means is once they turn 18, they're in charge of their own accounts. It converts over to them. And what happens is they would now have their regular brokerage account and they would have their regular Roth IRA account. They wouldn't be considered kids accounts anymore because they're no longer kids. Now, with the retirement account, they wouldn't be able to access it till they're 60 in terms of no penalties or no anything like that, whatever the case is, till they're 60. That is great, but you may not be around during that time, depending on how old you are and how old your kids are. So that's the reason why some people might say, well, then in that case, I want to put more into their regular custodial account, which at 18 they'll have access to. The negative to that is that most kids, when they turn 18, are not financially aware to handle that. So if you put in money from the age of when they're 1, so I'm going to throw this up here. This is a compound calculator. I like to play around with this sometimes. I was formulating some calculations a moment ago, but say if you were to put away for your kids $500 a month, and that's the initial investment, $500. Initial investment, 500 a month. And the length of time, we're going to say 18, because they're going to go from first being born to 18 years old. I'm going to do 15%. I feel that's a nice, comfortable in between. I've seen some percentage in terms of interest rates that are 25, 30%. I've seen some that are like lower in the 12 percentile range, maybe 11 percentile range. So I'm going to just do 15. And after that time, that's what they would be looking at 18 years old. Now, obviously, a kid shouldn't be having that at 18 years old. So you could just not tell them about it, or you could focus more on the Roth account. And I want to show you something here with the Roth account, which I think is interesting. The Roth account, similar to the Roth account, or any kind of IRA, retirement account, we're just going to call it that for simple terms, it has a limit of $6,000 a year. But if you put $6,000 in, and I went over this in one of my older videos, you contribute nothing for 60 years. So since the day that they're born, you throw in $6,000 and leave it at that. You got the 15% return. When they turn 60, they'll have $26 million. So that is a way for you to kind of prepare for the future. I always tell people get that out of the way, because at least that's like, I'm not gonna say everything's 100% guaranteed, but at least for the most part, you're able to just kind of throw that in there and know that when you're not around, they will be good and your grandkids will be good. So I suggest both of these accounts, the Roth IRA for the kids and the traditional custodial account for the kids. You would choose which one you want to put more into. If you are, if you're not super well off, I personally say do the little trick that I just showed you. Put like about $6,000 into the Roth for the kids. And then after that, don't put anything more in it. And then from there, put into the custodial one. At least that way, if they needed anything in between that time, they can. And, the other one's just going to sit there and do its thing for 60 years because the time will do its own thing. Now, clicking onto the retirement accounts, we have Roth IRA and the traditional IRA. So I'm going to go over those two differences here. Let me just have them both on the screen at the same time. So you're looking at this one, and you're looking at this one. At first, I was a little confused on the differences between these two, but then I just kind of did some research just to make sure I was understanding it correctly. And here's the difference between the two. And your situation might vary in terms of which one benefits you better. So in terms of traditional IRA works like this. Both of them have a $6,000 limit in terms of what you could put into them. And if you're over 50, my understanding is that then it goes up to $7,000 is what the limit. Here on Fidelity, I think if you're in between 40 and 50, it's 6,500 becomes the limit. So generally 6,000 and it'll go up to 7,000 as far as what you can put into it until you reach 60. I think you keep contributing after 60. I'm not really too sure how that works though. But now, traditional IRA is tax deducted. So for the most part, if you're working a job where something like that was included, they would take your deduction out before it's taxed. So say, for example, for easy math, right? We'll say, matter of fact, I'm not going to do all that math in my head right now. My brain is kind of like foggy right now. So I'm just going to simply say this. You're generally being taxed beforehand. So you know how you would get your paycheck before taxes and you see the after taxes, the gross versus the net. So before it's taxed, you would have the deductions taken out, which means that it's not your more money is going into your traditional IRA because it's coming out before you actually get taxed. So they're taking it out of your paycheck before it actually gets taxed, before what goes into your pocket. So more of that is going into your own possession in terms of in your account. Most jobs do it like that as well. And if you're doing it this way, I'll explain how that works, because obviously your check going into your hand is going into your hand first. So how are you going to get that money back if it's already been taxed? Essentially, you're going to get it back when you do your taxes. They're going to give that back to you. So you'll have a higher return when you do your taxes. Now, when you do hit 60, they're going to now tax you at 60. In addition to that, if you remove money before 60, you get a 10% penalty on top of obviously the taxes. So obviously we're gonna view this from a perspective of you're not taking money from either one of these accounts before 60. In that case, the traditional IRA is you're gonna get more in tax season, but you're going to get taxed later on when you turn 60 on that money. So it'd be almost the equivalent of, not necessarily double, but say if you, after taxes, were able to put $10 into an account, and then before taxes, like you're putting $15 into an account, that money is going to stack up more faster. But at the same time too, when it's time for taxes, you're also going to now be taxed on that more money. The way the Roth IRA works is that you're putting your money as is after you've already been taxed. So when you get your paycheck, you're just putting whatever you have from your paycheck that you could put into the Roth IRA into it. It's going to grow tax-free. And when it's time to take that money out, it's tax-free at 60, because this was part of your paycheck you paid with from after you already got taxed. So it kind of takes that process out of it. So it's hard to really decide which one's better for you. I personally think that if you want something simpler, the Roth IRA is better, because you simply just take the money you already have in your bank, bring it over, and like say every time you get paid, bring over some money to your account and just put into your Roth IRA, and that's it. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to speak to your tax guy about it. That's all you do. Traditional IRA, you have to make sure you talk to your tax guy to get some of that money back. Otherwise, all you're doing is you're putting that after tax money into your account. And if you don't do your taxes well, or speak to your tax guy, or allow him to take care of that and address to him that this is what you have going in and blah, blah, then what happens is you not only paid with your after-tax money, you're still going to get taxed on it. So that kind of falls in place with your tax guy and you doing your taxes. So that could be a benefit if, it does give you a better, tax return later on. If you feel that, that's something that you kind of need at the moment, and you're able to kind of really figure out that math and how much it benefits you. But I say for just the average person who really doesn't want to think too much on that, maybe you don't think your tax guy is great at doing taxes. Maybe you don't want to wait to that point to get that money back at the end of the year. You just want to take the money that you did send, from your paycheck as is after tax, put it into your Roth IRA, and just say to yourself, I don't want to think about it. So when it comes to I turn 60, I don't want to think about taxes when I'm 60. I don't want to have to, hit that road bump. Not to say that obviously if your thing's making a lot of money on it, it's going to be what it is in the account. The only difference is every year, say you've been having these retirement accounts for 10 years, and you look at where you're at in 10 years, and your Roth IRA is looking nice, your traditional IRA is looking even better. And not to say you would do both at the same time, but let's say hypothetically both are running side by side, and you were like, either the Roth is doing great, the traditional is doing even better. But then the Roth is what you see is what you get. The traditional, you're going to go, wait a minute, I'm going to get taxed on this, and how much am I going to get taxed on it? Because the tax that you get taxed on it is also up to, if I'm not mistaken, decided by wherever the government is at that given moment in taxes, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I think it's like whatever, it's still potentially at risk to, I don't know if the normal taxes you pay on that has been the same for however many years, or if it's not. I'm not really too familiar with that, but that's just a thing you'll have to address when that time comes. So sorry if I rambled on a bit much, but I wanted to make sure you guys understood that. So going back to just in general, the type of accounts, I definitely recommend that you guys set yourself up with a traditional brokerage account, a retirement account. Like I said, I suggest the Roth IRA, but you could go with the traditional if you want. I would say set up, if you have kids, set up your children's account, the regular custodial account, and their Roth IRA for kids. So those 4 ones are definite. In addition to that, later on, if you feel like you're about to retire from your job at any point in time, you can do the, where is the, I just was at it, retirement one. There's rollover IRAs, and that's where you're able to roll over the 401k or whatever you already have from your job into, whatever you have, just in case if, say, you retire before the age of 60, or maybe you leave your job and you're like, okay, I'm not retired yet, but I left that job and I want it in my own hands. So maybe I started my own business or whatever the case is, or whatever you're doing. You could then roll it over into a rollover IRA, and then you continue from where your job left off. So that's something that will come down the line. You don't have to open up a rollover one anytime soon, but those 4 that I mentioned, I would definitely say do that for yourself. And that will at least give you a place to put your money while you're on this budgeting journey. So that way, you're not in this kind of state of, what do I do when I have extra money? Do I just end up getting tempted to spend it? No, put it to invest in your future. Because like I said, that is a big deal. I want to go over some numbers really quickly. I used to say this with the whole budgeting thing when I did a couple of budgeting videos before. If you can say, put away $500 and start with initially $500 a month, and you are 25 years old. I know it's not easy, but if you can do that from 25 years old on, and so 35 years to the time you get 60 at 15%. And obviously that 500 will be easier to do as you get older, because let's assume you'll be making more money as you get older. You'd be looking at $5 million and some change. Now, if you are, say, this is where you would definitely focus. And this is like more so, like I said, 500 would be the base minimum of a retirement account, because you can only put 6,000 in it. So that would equate to 500 a month. If you are a person who is, we'll say, 40 years old, and you're doing that, you've got 20 years left. And like I said, so maybe you're doing this as a plan to kind of get yourself on track. Like you kind of fell off, you didn't start off well, you maybe had some hard times. Now you're just getting started. If you're 40 years old, you start this for a 20-year plan, and that is where you'd be at. And it's not to say that you would have to, just stop there, but we'll do a little bit of math, and I'm going to show you something. So if I take the calculator here, and at that amount there, we'll say that you're going to take, because this is what I've been told that people generally do. We're just going to round it up to, do I get a back button on here? Okay. Not used to using the calculator on a computer. We'll do 60, just round it up to 623,000, right? We're going to now times that to make 4%. That's 4% of that. So what I've been told, talking with friends of mine and family about the 4% rule, is that generally speaking in investment, if you were to remove 4%, and you saw that we calculated 15%, but most of the time the 4% rule is to say that whether the interest, in the economy goes up or goes down, for the most part, an average of 4% shouldn't affect your investment and cause it to go down. They say anything more than that, and you might run the risk. I don't know who came up with that number. That's the golden number, but generally speaking, that's the number I heard. And it's saying 4% would be that kind of area where if you take out 4%, your investment should never go down. It will still increase, but not by much. In this case, the 15% we went at, that would bring it of an increase of 11%, that it should steadily go up while you're deducting 4% each time. And obviously this number gets more and more because 11%, taking 4% out of an 11% increase every year will get greater. But generally speaking, we're looking at that for the year. We're going to divide that by 12. And that's $2,076. Now, if this was coming out of your Roth account, which you're no longer getting taxed on, at 60 years old, so if you were 40 years old, you did this for a 20-year plan, you have 623,000, we'll round it off, 623,000 inside the bank. You're going to take 4% of that to live off of while it's still growing more, because obviously you want to still grow more. So you're looking at every month a check of $2,076 a month. This is tax free because remember, there's the Roth account, so you're not getting taxed. That is the beauty of this. Now, and like I said, that was an amount of $500 a month. So I definitely would tell people jump on that if you're like about 40 years old. Jump on that now, and this can be your retirement, and you deduct 4% out of that, and that's what you would get a month. Now, with that being said, the amount that's going to grow from that point on, we're going to take, say, we're going to go up to 30 years off that 6,623. We're just going to type it like that for easy math. 623,000. And say if at that point you're no longer contributing anything to it, you're contributing zero. But now, the years are going to be 10 years, 10 more years. So now you're 60 years old. You're going to let this rock for another 10 years, but at 11%, because the 4% is what you're deducting to get you your 2,000 and some change dollars to hold you over monthly. In another 10 years, while you're deducting that 4%, which is that 2,070 something dollars a month into your pocket is what you're living off of, your account will eventually get to a point of 1,768,000. So once again, doing the math here, obviously your monthly income is going to be changing along the way of those 10 years. But just to give you some perspective here, once you hit 70, I'll round this up also to 1769. And then we're going to get 4% of that. And now at 70 years, divided by 12. Now at 70 years old, so from 60, you were getting $2,076 a month. By the time you hit 70 years old, you'll now be getting $5,900, rounded off, $5,900 a month now, tax free. All you had to do was just live off that 2,000, and every year was going to be increasing. So like maybe it was 2,300 after, the first year, then the second year, whatever, go on up and up and up until to the point where 10 years and it would be that in theory. But you got to get the idea. So that's why it's very important to kind of set yourselves up for that kind of situation. And here's another thing too. So if you also are one of those people who is in a situation where, say, if you're about to retire from a job, maybe your finances aren't doing that well, you had to pay debt, you had to this and that, you do got a little bit of chunk of money that you can put aside from that job as you're leaving, but it's not enough for you to retire on yet, but it is a good chunk. And say if you're about like maybe 40, we'll say like 45 years old, right? And you're able to have like about $100,000 from whatever retirement that you were coming from. Like you came from a job, you were supposed to retire with a whole bunch more money, but you weren't able to, and you had to use it for bills. Maybe things didn't work out that well. Maybe you had a divorce. Maybe you had something going on and some kind of big life bill and whatever. All you got is $100,000 left. You could take that, throw that in to your Roth at 45 years old, let it sit for 15 years. Don't add nothing to it, no contributions at all. And you're looking at $813,000, which, like I said, would be enough for you to be on a retirement plan. Once again, at 9.04, take out the 4% rule, divide that by 12 for your monthly amount, and you're looking at $2,710 tax-free every month to live on. So it's not bad. And then, like I said before, that's going to grow. So by the time you turn 70 in 10 more years, it's going to get even way more than that. So if any of these options that will work for you, just try to implement them. I just wanted to come back to, I know this is a kind of crude way of doing this. I wasn't super organized. I just wanted to kind of throw this out there. I was really just in a rush to get this out there, this content to you guys, because I really wanted to come back to this topic. We've gone over a lot of self-help topics before, and we have covered finances before, but I haven't covered them in a little bit, and I want to come back around to them. So you guys put down the comments down below if any of this resonates with you. If you guys have any questions, I'm not an expert, but I know a little something on a lot of things. So hopefully this is enough to kind of get you started, because for a lot of people, it's just the starting point that becomes the issue of not even actually getting themselves started, or even knowing how to manage money. So 100%, I want you guys to try to at least get started. I recommend Fidelity. You can go with any other one you choose. Open up a Fidelity account, put your money into it, get things started, especially if you're not too old. If you're below 40 years old, you're 40 and below, 45 and below, get started. Try to make it work so that way you have a retirement plan for yourself. Even if your job claims they have a retirement plan for you, you try to get started on one yourself in addition to that, just in case. And as always, you guys, like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.